Hello, everyone, and welcome to Profiles in Risk. I am your host, Nick Lamparelli. I am so pleased to have my two guests with me today. We did a home and home series. They recorded us on Insurance Nerds. Now I have the pleasure of recording them and asking them a whole bunch of questions. But I would like to introduce Ted and Arleen Taveras. Both of them are, as you can see in the background, if you're listening to this, go to the YouTube channel, Spot on Insurance, awesome backdrop. But they also run Insurance Licensing Services of America, and we're going to spend a few minutes today talking about both the podcast and your company. And welcome to Profiles in Risk.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, Nick. We are excited to be here.
Excited to have you. Happy to return the favor. We had an awesome conversation with Carly and Tony, which is going to be released right around the time this is going to be released. So it's going to be awesome timing to sort of amplify the message. People aren't going to be able to get enough of us. So,
and it's all nerd work because we're going to be talking. You said today we're going to be talking about regulatory compliance, and for some people, it doesn't get nerdier than that.
I thought I was one of the biggest insurance nerds. I may be topped by this couple here. So why don't we start off a little bit? It's a little bit more challenging with two people. So when we talked the first time, I understand there was like a disparate background that kind of brought you two together. So let's talk about, how did you two get together?
You start. She loves telling the stories.
Well, we're both originally from New York, and we grew up in Park Slope. We didn't meet there. We met years later in New York through family. But yeah, we didn't meet in Brooklyn. But definitely, it's nice that we're both from the same background, from neighboring schools.
And now we actually were born in the neighboring island next to Puerto Rico where we live. So we speak Spanish, and I was born in the Dominican Republic. Her heritage is from there, but she was born in New York.
In New York, I was born in Brooklyn.
I tell them that I'm from the
Before Brooklyn
island.
was cool.
I tell people that I'm from the island of the Dominican Republic, and she's from the island of Manhattan.
Yeah. I used to live in Brooklyn as well. I used to live in Park Slope. So I used to run around Prospect Park.
That was where I used to go jogging. Yes.
Yes. Great spot. Of course, when I went there, it was cool. And it was an awesome place to live. I think, Arleen, when you were there, it's probably when Warriors movie was out. It was probably a lot tougher.
Yeah, it was a little tougher when we were there. Absolutely.
But I did get to see Barbara Streisand when she was filming. Was it For Pete's Sake or whatnot? And she was coming out of the manhole, and it was like right in front of our house, which, by the way, my dad still lives in Brooklyn and still owns the building where I grew up. So he's just a few blocks from the Barclays Center. And we have so many family and friends still in that area.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you brought that up because I lived in Windsor Terrace, which is just off of Park Slope, right next to the park. And when the year that I lived there, they were filming movies all the time. Like Brooklyn they're the cute little neighborhoods, and Brooklyn's like one of the really cool places that film crews can come in. They're like encouraging them, come in, film. I remember the last one that they were filming was one of the Spider-Man movies in Windsor Terrace, blocked off all the streets. Brooklyn's awesome. We could go about Brooklyn all day, awesome bagels, everything, but insurance is much cooler. So you guys met. Were you in insurance before you met, or did you meet and then find your way into insurance?
Right. We were not in insurance when we met, but we used to do a lot of freelance work together. We worked at some of the biggest corporations, McGraw-Hill, Chadbourne and Park, and
one of the law firms. And then she would work down also in Wall Street. We both did our time. We spent about 10 years freelancing, and I happened to have caught a freelance job at Minette, and they really liked my work. I was there for about 2 or 3 weeks, and he said, do you know anybody else who you know, who can work here? Because we've got a large project and it'll be going on for a few months. And I said, yeah, I think I know somebody. I said, my wife, she does freelancing as well. If you like to see how she does. And he said, sure, bring her in. Well, we did our stint there. They loved our work. I left and we both left. And then about a year later, Mike D'Angelo calls me. He was the manager at the time. And he says, Ted, I would like to offer you a job. Like, after a year, it's like, we really liked your work and we would like to offer you a job. And I said, look, Mike, I really enjoy freelancing. I don't take anything home with me. People love me when I leave. They throw a party for me. So I really enjoyed that aspect. I'm not shouldering anything. I'm just doing the work and getting out. And I'm enjoying it because I was getting to learn about management in different companies. How to manage people, like people who hated their jobs and people who loved their jobs. Mm-hmm. So I said to him, I'm also, because I studied journalism and English in Syracuse, I wanted to get a job, if anything, in internal communications. And that's not what he was offering at that point in time. So I said, but you remember Arleen, she's working at the bank. She's been working at the bank for a few years now. She would like to switch over and do something else. And he said, okay, send her in. She went, interviewed, got the job. And about 9 months later, you brought me in. Because I said, anything that opens up in communications, I'd like to, if it involves writing and communications, get me in there. And she did. Yeah. She talked to them and they said, it's available. I went, got an interview. And then we were both working at the same company for a while.
And just to go back a little bit, I was working at Chemical Bank at the time. On a full-time basis, still freelancing on the side, doing just freelance every once in a while. And at that time, this was like in the late 80s, the banks were going through a lot of restructuring. And so I was reporting to the controller, the deputy controller of the bank in the finance division. And we were under the impression that we were going to be soon getting laid off. So, in New York, when you work in New York, you have everything like in your office, right? So I had a cubicle right outside of his office and I used to have all my shoes, everything, so, like you leave all your shoes in your cubicle. So I had gradually started taking everything home because I was prepared like every week to be laid off. And I was excited about it. I had made my plans that I was going to be getting the severance package. I was going to get to be home for a couple of months, but it never came. So that's what happened when the opportunity came up at Minette. I ended up having to resign from the bank and taking on this position. But I loved my time at the bank in the finance division.
We did a lot of, I guess, what they call now the gig economy, gig jobs.
Yeah.
Because she and I we would come home, we had dual jobs. We would have a regular 9 to 5, and then we'd go in the evening and get a phone call at 6 o'clock, come on in and work for this law firm. They need you to do word processing and this other stuff. And we would be there till 1 or 2 in the morning. Sometimes we get home, get ready for bed, and at 10 or 11 o'clock, they send a call for us, and I'd work the night shift, the overnight they needed, because it was like $11 an hour during the day. If it's in the evening, it was like $23 an hour, and then it went up to $30 an hour in the later one. So
and then $33 an hour when we were doing bilingual work. So that was pretty good. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about back in 1989. So that was good money.
Good. Yeah, absolutely.
For us, it was good money, and it helped. But like I said, it was really a training program for us, in the sense that we looked at the different management styles. We were studying, and we said, you know what, if we ever owned a company, now we know how we would treat our employees, how we take care of them, because there are people who absolutely love what they did. They were fostered, they were helped to grow, they were in a nurturing environment. And then there were others who absolutely couldn't stand it where they were and couldn't wait to get out, or did whatever to sabotage, as they say at times. So we got to see that, and we talked about possibly starting a company. Tell them, I'll let you tell them what you did.
Well, I mean, the transition from the bank to the insurance world was a very interesting transition, because when I was at Chemical Bank, it was very, very corporate. And so then I joined Minette, and it's a London broker. They had just started in New York. And it was amazing because it was so laid back. You would think that you're going into this different culture, a lot of Brits, and yet it was so embracing. And I was probably like the 16th or 17th employee, and it was like a family. And it was just amazing. We would have our staff meetings together every Monday. We would have lunch together. We would go shopping together.
And she's talking about from the CEO on down.
Yeah.
Eating,
Wow.
you know, just it was a really,
we would
really
visit
nice
each other in our homes. And
we'd go down the street to eat at Heart Attack on the Bun. That's what they call it. Because on 42nd Street right there and around 3rd Avenue, they had this place. And everything was fried on the grill. You could see everything fried on top, and we'd call it a Heart Attack on the Bun. So the CEO would come over, Bunny, and one of them would come over and say, hey, anybody want to go to Heart Attack on the Bun today? We're like, okay, let's go.
And for a long time, I actually thought that was the name of the place.
Yeah. She didn't know any other names.
I didn't know what that place was.
I bet you were surprised when you found out that wasn't the name. Like, what?
Yeah. But
So,
I mean, we had great people there, and I had wonderful mentors, and it really taught us a lot that we were able to carry on.
But what you used to do was regulatory compliance for them. They actually, that's not how she started, but.
Right. I mean, I started as an administrative assistant, and this was back in 1989, started as an administrative assistant in the risk consulting division of Manette. And I used to report to Nancy Settergren and Ellen Pearl. And they've stayed on with Aon for all of this time. And Mike D'Angelo was the one that he encouraged me to go to the College of Insurance right there in New York, which is now part of St. John's. And I went to the College of Insurance, got my degree in risk management. And I also used to go to school at night for economics and whatnot. But once I was in there in the risk consulting division, I just absolutely loved it. I was like, wow, this is home. This is exciting. Exciting in the sense I loved the people. I loved working on projects together with them. And then once I got my degree in risk management, an opportunity came about. Our legal department out in London was like, you guys got to get your operations together and kind of,
there you go.
You have to get your licensing and regulatory compliance together. There were a lot of companies had lots of problems at the time.
So that gets to the crux of when I counsel young professionals, what I tell them is there are going to be a whole bunch of stuff in the company that nobody wants to do, nobody wants to touch. They're either going to think it's boring or too complicated. Master that. Yes. And now you become a vital cog to the entire operation. If you become an expert in one thing, people sort of think you're an expert in a whole bunch of other things as well. So in your particular case, it's that the operations part was kind of falling apart.
Yes.
And you solved it, right?
Well,
they needed somebody to take over.
I was in my 20s, but all I kept envisioning is like, how do I move up? What do I need to do to move up? First of all, I'm learning so much from these people, but give me something that I can move up. And that opportunity came about. They said, you would be great. Like the people from London, Michael Brown, who was my boss's boss, he said, you guys have to get this in control, like this licensing and regulatory compliance. You guys are like running like the Wild Wild West out there in the US.
Literally.
And so they said, we have to get licensing under control. Right now, everyone's doing their own thing. And so that opportunity came about for me, and I became the head of licensing. I had no one to actually go to learn about licensing. This is pre-internet. This is pre-Google.
She means she was self-taught. They basically said, here's the position. Everything's a mess. You figure it out. But tell them what you used to do with the drawer.
With the drawer, I used to stuff like, oh my gosh. I used to like get up bonds. Like I didn't know what to even do with a bond, like a broker bond. At first I was like, okay, I got this broker bond. What do I do with it? And so I had it in my drawer.
Amazing.
So she,
so I learned everything about it.
Oh, wait. So you put it in your drawer. I'm going to reach, right? Hold on. This is just right over my monitor. Here are all my 50 state the licenses just kind of hanging out. And if I need something, I just sort of reach for it. I know that's bad practice, isn't it? It's just kind of hanging out there.
Practice, yes. You know, it's so funny because when I first reached out to you guys and I wanted you guys to come on our podcast, the first thing Tony said was like, I don't know anything about licensing.
Yeah.
Like he was like afraid, like I might ask him something about licensing.
Well, she learned the hard way. And one of the things that she did was, and of course, sometimes that's the best way to learn. You know, you get in there, nobody else does it. You have to do it. There's nobody else to do it. You force yourself to learn it. Well, what happens is you get a full foundation. You learn from, you know, the paperwork all the way to the digital. So she was able to get that down pat.
Yeah.
And from then on, she decided to start outsourcing, and she was outsourcing to a company out there. And she kept coming to me and said, Ted, you work on computers, you're programming. Why can't you and I start a business in regulatory compliance? I don't like the way they're doing it. It's too paper intensive. Maybe we could digitize this. So maybe we can insurtech this, is what she was saying at the time, because it was the word. Yeah. So I was like, yes, we can do it, but we really have to look into this. And we were told by some of our friends, including Mike, oh, that's too much of a niche. You're not going to be able to make any money on there. And it's funny because about 2 years ago, we met with Mike and he goes, I didn't know what the hell I was talking about at the time, obviously. I said, you just don't know with these things. So we believed in what we were doing and we said, we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, back then, you know, I was just frustrated. Every time we would have an acquisition and we would bring on a new practice, a bunch of brokers, and we might have to get 300 licenses pretty quickly, and it would just take months. You know, I was outsourcing and I was just frustrated, like, why does this process have to take so long? And that's when I kept telling Ted, oh my gosh, there's got to be a better way to do this thing. And then a couple of years later, we end up moving to Texas, and Minette gets bought out by Aon. And still things were very, very done on paper. There was no automation. And I was still heading it up for like 12 or 15 offices, still kind of centralized everything. I had put together a great system. When Aon bought us, I again thought that I was going to be let go. And I called up my friend, Ellen, in New York, who was general counsel of Aon in New York for the Eastern region. And I was like, hey, you know, what's going on? When is my severance package coming? And she says, call up Chicago. I called Chicago. When I go, because I have these plans, we're going to start our own business. And they said, no, we want you guys, we want you to stay on board.
The curse of being really overappreciated.
We really have enjoyed working with you for all these 9 months or so, and we want you to stay on board. So I ended up having to resign from Aon.
Basically, we got nothing. We started with, but actually they
became our first client.
They became our first client. They were extremely helpful because they were closing the office there and they were going to give away the equipment. And since we were working with them anyway, they said, you guys can have it. Here's a printer. Here's this. Take what you need from the office. You know, so we made a really, really great deal.
It was a wonderful way to start.
It was a wonderful way. They helped us get started. And of course, being our first client made it pretty easy. I can say I bragged on Aon a lot.
That's a gutsy move, though.
It was, because here it is. I was still on my New York salary, living in Texas. So they kept me on my New York salary. And yeah, I loved the stability of getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, the benefits.
Well, I was working at Metropolitan Transit Authority. I was designing the website at the time, doing bus schedules for them and doing artwork. So while I was doing that, she was able to get started with the company. I would come home at night to design our website, to start putting together all kinds of, databases and things like that, trying to figure out how to take it from being paper intensive to what we have today. So that's how that started.
That's a perfect segue. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to transition to make this more self-serving.
Yeah.
I might as well get some free consulting. So what would you recommend? How do I avoid this? What should I be doing?
Well, first of all, you need to scan all of that. You should have it scanned state by state. You should have a little database where, I mean, do you have a tickler? How do you know, like, when your licenses are coming up for renewal?
Okay, so I have a database. I have the renewal dates, and top of my email, I should share my screen, but I won't. It
Good.
says, Nick, can you please complete the process if you haven't already? And it says, Rethought Insurance Agency, New York, Excess Lines License. So I go into it, and it's like, oh, the renewal, I forgot.
Oh gosh.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Let's transition to how this works with us and the reason why.
yeah.
The
I want to talk about this. So let's Insurance Licensing Services of America. If
Yeah.
I were a customer,
Mhm.
what would that look like?
Okay, well, first we onboard you, and that process is you fill out an online data form. And from that data form, that information gets put into our database. From that, we can complete any state's application.
We compiled it based on all the questions that the 50 states might be able to ask. So they're all in there more or less, and it's shortened. And as much as possible, we autofill a lot of it. So that gets done for you. We have your information.
And I mean, clients pick and choose what services they want because we have over 50 services. So not only are we going to do new license applications, we do renewals, we do CE tracking. So we tell our people we're paid to nag. So we're going to send out reminders and say, hey, you still have 3 credits to do by such and such date. You have to get this done.
That's very
So
important. I mean, I don't keep track of my CE credits. So what happens is I'm probably I'm taking too many classes because I'm too lazy to go check to see where I stand, and I know the end of the year is coming. So I'm just like, well, I'll just keep taking classes. I'll just go on a webinar, get my 2 credits, just keep filling up that bucket, knowing I'm going to probably overfill it because I don't have time to pay attention to all that stuff. And essentially, you're the outsourcing firm that keeps someone like me from going to jail.
yes, yes. And I mean, typically, our clients have agencies where they have, several producers and they're doing business across the United States, typically maybe 20 to 50, 52 jurisdictions. And they also have an agency that is licensed. So they have to keep up with not only their licenses, their appointments, their CEs, all of their filings with the Secretary of States. A lot of people don't even think so much about that component of compliance, but you have to do all of the corporate
All this.
qualifications.
In compliance, it's not what you know that's going to kill you, it's what you don't know. Because that creates a domino effect in the industry, and all of a sudden all these states are saying, hey, this happened here, so now we're dinging you here, and then all of a sudden you've got 50 states dinging you for something that you didn't know. And for the states, that's not an excuse. So our job, we created this business as a result of the pains that she was going through, Minette, her learning process. And then we said, well, let's create something where we can take away that pain from folks. This is a job that nobody wants to do. As an agent, I don't want to be dealing with this. As an agency, what do I want to do? I either want to sell insurance, I want to market whatever it is that I have, but I don't want to. Regulatory compliance, I can tell you, is a beast. And so we have people that just are in touch with the states 24/7, pretty much. 5 days a week at least when they're open.
Because they're not open on the weekends, and they're
that's
not open
right.
after
So I
5.
can't say that. But as they're open, whether in California or up here, they're in touch. We also, in our case, being in Puerto Rico, we process applications up here. We go and we visit the states, the Department of Insurance. They know us intimately. We can walk in and talk to people all the time. I don't know if I should say this, but Arleen has gone in there and she's worked with them right there. They were like, you want to help us on the machine? And she's gotten on there and help. That's
Even
how well we know
before we
them.
moved to Puerto Rico, I would come here to Puerto Rico with the list of our clients' pending applications. And this was at the Secretary of State. And they actually let me go in and work my clients' files right there.
Okay, so
wait a minute. We have a very long established relationship with
Yeah.
them. We've been talking with them for years. We've come here on vacation and spent time with them. So there is a high level of trust is what that is.
that's so important. So I interviewed Lisa Miller, who in Florida, she was a deputy at the OIR, the Office of Insurance Regulations in Florida. And that's the conversation we had when I interviewed her on the podcast was she's like, go to your regulators, take them out for coffee, just have that discussion. Don't be afraid of them.
Yes.
They're humans. And I think that's the name of the podcast. Regulators are humans too.
Yeah.
And so, Arleen, I think you win the prize. You actually would push them aside, get behind the desk, and actually do their keyboard work for them. So I need to get like a trophy and put this, paste that on the video. That is amazing.
I mean, I think what we love to do is just talk to people and build relationships, right? And so why not with the regulators, right? Like one time we were meeting one of our clients in California. We said, oh, there's this upcoming conference going on. Do you guys want to attend as well? And they were like, why the hell will we do that? That's why we pay you guys.
Yeah.
But the relationship
for some people, it's
so
onerous.
important.
For us, it's about building relationships, making friends around the country. And we know attorneys in every state. We deal with them in regulatory compliance. We can make a phone call very easily and get help for people throughout. We've done it in the past where we have had major projects with people who are in a lot of trouble because they haven't taken care of their business, and we've been able to get 300 or 400 attorneys across the country together to try to figure out what the problem was. And they've saved a tremendous amount of money as a result of the work that we've done with their dealing with the states, because their fines would have been so much greater than they were. In fact, it paid for our service. So, and we're very transparent about what the cost for our service. So when you were asking earlier, when you enter into our service, one of the first things we do is we give you a list and we say, here are all the prices, here's everything, you know what it is. If you cannot afford this at this time, maybe you want to do it in 6 months from now, we will deal with 1 state or 2 states or 3 states, bring you in as you really need it. The great thing is, if you're going to go into a state, you can at any time call our office and call one of the managers in licensing or one of the other departments, and we'll bring a bunch of managers from the different areas that you need. You information on no charge. They will sit for an hour or so and discuss with you, entering the states, this is what you're going to face. These are the problems our clients that are similar to yours have faced, and this is how we resolve their issues. So you have a heads up in dealing with the different states.
Things like, and if they're going to acquire a new agency, if they're looking to have a DBA, okay, so we're going to tell them things about that naming of that new entity or the DBA that might cause problems, or suggestions on, hey, if you use this name, you're not going to have any problems. Another thing is the reason, Ted mentioned that we're very transparent. One of the things early on is we wanted people to be able to say, hey, this is how much it's going to cost me to use you guys. We never wanted to be in a position where a client felt like, oh my gosh, I got this invoice and I don't know what it's for.
Sure.
So up front, we prepare what we call a project cost analysis, where we're showing them exactly what it's going to cost to use our service. And hey, and this is what's going to cost you for the state fees, so that they can go into the project knowing how much it's going to cost. If they can't afford it, they can't afford it. You move on. So that's something that we started, not at the very end, at the very beginning. You evolve, right? It's things that you learn as you're running your business. And that's something that we developed many years into.
But there are different tiers to this. For example, there are people who say, well, that service there is very expensive, but can I piecemeal it? Can I work with you on certain projects? And we'll do that. For us, if it's 1 license, 20 licenses, 30 licenses, we tend to be able to work with all of that. So you can pick and choose your services. There's so many different things in regulatory compliance. Again, I think one of the important things is being able to talk to a group of professionals who do this on a regular basis and go over in general everything that you do, and then they'll tell you where the holes are. They'll tell you where you're going to fall through a cavern. Stay away from that. This is what you have to look for. And having that kind of guidance is really what you pay for in regulatory compliance. The next part of that is when crap hits the fan with you. And sometimes it happens before, oftentimes it happens before they come anywhere near us. They come to us because they're already in that hole. Well, a lot of the people that work with us completely avoid those because of the fact that we're handling it.
Yeah.
And we're also take the responsibility if something was to go wrong. So if something goes wrong, we're responsible. We look at, you know, that we CYA everything. For the most part, that's not what we have. We have clients that come in and they just want to know what the services are that they need, what the problems are, what the issues are, and they handle it. You know, they're just lost.
Sure.
And our job is to help them find their way. And that's what we do.
One of the things also, we were talking about pricing and whether a client can afford our services or not. There's always going to be clients or agencies out there that maybe it's not a good fit right now. Financially, they can't afford us. And this was something that was really brought to our attention during the recession, you know, and the reason that we're now developing online courses, because we realize that there will always be agencies that either get too big, that it's just not feasible for them to outsource, right? It just gets to where they're spending millions and millions in outsourcing, and they need tools to be able to train their people internally. Or there's those agencies that are too small. It's just not cost effective for them to outsource to us. During the recession, it was one of the most difficult things that we went through. You know, the recession, of course, hit 2008, and we had already been in business a good 11 years, right? Everybody says once you pass 10 years, you're good to go. You're solid. You know, you're there.
Well,
the recession hit us, and by 2010, we lost so many clients because they went out of business, they merged. We lost 70% of our income at that time. The clients that stayed with us, it was like on a weekly basis, we were taking calls from clients saying, please, can you discount your services? We need you in order to stay in compliance. Without you guys, we can't go forward. And so we gave tremendous discounts at the time. But when we emerged out of all of that, we realized, my goodness, there were so many clients there that we just couldn't help. You know, like we had to part ways. They couldn't afford our services. How wonderful would it have been had we been able to have an online course for them so that they could train their people internally? And so that's the reason that we now have these online courses that we're developing for agency licensing, compliance, Secretary of State filings, so that people have this course that they can consistently train their people internally.
Just gives them more choices now in terms of regulatory compliance.
Yeah, and so that came out from that pain that we went through and from what we saw so many of our clients in the industry go through.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So how does Spot On Insurance, where does that come in? Where'd that idea come from? And what were you trying to get accomplished with that?
Well, I was at a conference in Washington. At the time, I was the chairman of the Heart of Texas Workforce Commission, and somebody came up several years ago with a mic to interview me during that conference. And it was like, you're the chairman, I want to talk to you about this. What is this for? This is for a podcast. And I turn around and go, podcast? What's that? So he started to explain podcasting to me. And I said, wow, that's a really unique idea. It's focused just on this industry. And he goes, yes. And then I thought, ooh, regulatory compliance. So I immediately said to him,
huge audience.
Yeah. So my brain just went,
people.
And I guess, you know, when you go around as an entrepreneur, you always have to be listening, because these opportunities pop up in different, and you can easily miss it. But he said that to me, and I turned around and I went, I need to get my wife upstairs. I want to talk to you, meet with you later. Let's talk about this. Do you do this for others? And he said, yes. And so I said, okay, what I want to do is meet with my wife. I want to introduce her to this. And I want to call you from our office and have our managers talk to you about this because I see some tremendous possibility for us. I said, we are dying to let people know about regulatory compliance, teach them about the industry. We know so many people in the industry. We've been doing this for so long that I think this would be a really good podcast that, maybe this will work. And at the same time, the more people know about what we're doing, and if we are providing a really good service on air, well, then it'll automatically translate to more services for ILSA as well. So, and that's
it's advice. We actually talk about that in Insurance Nerds as well, but it's advice that I think is well taken, which is you should have different levels of engagement and intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone's going to be a customer.
Right.
But people are interested, right? And so, Arleen, you talked about making what if we had the web course that was available? They may not be a customer, but a web course might be a better fit.
Right.
And then there are folks that, they're just on the path of learning, and they use that Google thing, and they're like, I need to understand more. Oh my God.
Yes.
There's a podcast. I can just, for free, I can just sit there and listen and learn about this one particular thing and sort of ratchet up the engagement over time.
Yes.
Until they're just like, you know what? It doesn't make sense for me to do that. And I think the best example would be like, I can give, it would be like iTunes. At first I was just like, I am not paying 99 cents for a song. I refuse.
I'm with you.
I refuse. So I would go to the library, get the CD. I would get the CD onto on MP3s onto my hard drive. But then something interesting happened. I would switch phones or switch computers, and I had to drag this information around with me. And finally, I was like, "This is a big waste of time. What am I doing? I'm going to pay the 99 cents because I don't want to have to deal with it anymore."
Right.
It's the same thing, whether it's regulatory compliance or other areas. It's, you should have a curve of how you engage and how intimate you are with your customers at different stages of the buying process.
Right.
Well, you have only a certain amount of time during any given day. All of us do. They got the 24 hours, and we have our jobs to do. And very easily, regulatory compliance can eat up your day. There's a lot of companies that we've dealt with where gone in doing or somebody who's an administrative assistant, and they've got 20 or 30 other jobs that they have them doing all these other things, and they're wondering why they're in so much trouble with the states, because that individual cannot keep up doing the jobs. They don't understand that, hey, this is a job in itself, and it'll grow, and
this
grows
is the
into
core
a
of your
monster.
business.
Completely.
Yeah,
So,
this is the core of your business. But I want to go back a little bit on the podcast, on how Spot On Insurance came about. When we first started the podcast, we were outsourcing the hosting.
Doug Foresta.
And Doug Foresta was doing it for us.
Awesome guy. Awesome.
And for the longest, our team kept telling us, hey, you guys should do it. And we were just busy. We were in Texas. We were running the business. And then we decided to move to Puerto Rico in 2016. And we decided to start doing the hosting ourselves, because we knew, like, everyone in the industry was like, come on, guys, you guys should do it. You guys are the people that know these regulators. You know these, all the folks out there, the stuff. And we decided to do it in 2017.
Really? She just threw me under the bus. She was like, you go when you do it. I was like, oh, that's another job on top of, now we own basically two companies, one in Texas, one here. We're running that. And now you want me to also do this and maybe do some editing. And then I said, finally, I said, yeah.
So in 2017, in January of 2017, he started doing the hosting, and then I joined a few months later.
But I like to have fun. So I know that everything that we do and what you guys do, it's about telling a story. It's about getting people involved, getting people excited about the industry that you work with, introducing them to new things, new challenges, new ideas. But I like to do that in a fun way. I like to jest, to joke around. And by myself, I was so busy focusing on the questions and things I had to ask that I said to her, look, you come in and you be the more serious one. I'm
And
going
now
to.
I used to be a CEO of a company. Now I am a podcast production assistant.
But
I
you know,
love it. I love doing the podcast. I love researching people and the new things that they're putting out there in the industry. We just interviewed Matt Daniels recently, and he's all about drones and using drones in the insurance industry. And we had an interview on epigenetics. So
epigenetics
it's
of
so
all things for
cool.
the insurance industry, them being able to tell, whether you're a smoker or not a smoker, or whether you drank this week, getting it to that point, but also on the other side, being able to get it to the point where they can reduce your cost as a result of being able to tell that you are a person who's healthy, who's taking care of themselves and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So there's always a two-edged sword, but it's allowing us to have fun. And what I was saying is, she can get serious with the questions. I come in and we can have a good time with the guests, and it allows us to flow better. So it's worked out very well for us. People seem to be we're getting really good reactions.
We have a small team here in Puerto Rico, and of course, our core team is there in Texas, 65 employees in Texas, and just a handful here in Puerto Rico. And it's worked out great for us. We're enjoying doing the podcast and putting together the online courses.
What they really enjoy here, the guys here, is they're all on the creative side. They do the photography, they do the videos. So we like to actually, for our guests, do their own. They'll send us a little video, and these guys will rework it. And we do everything to really help that person that comes in as our guest to get out there.
Yes.
We put them out there and showcase them to the world, and it's a
and
win-win.
You guys give the best gifts.
So,
awesome.
Right on my desk.
So look, it's not just what we do on the outside, on the that people can visually see. It's what we like to say thank you and give back to those who made an effort for us. And I think that's what it's about. It's about making friends all over the country, and it's about being able to say thank you for helping us.
I can't say it better than that. I'm going to respect your time on this and transition over and to learn a little bit more about Ted and Arleen. We always ask a few personal questions at the end of every podcast, and so one question I've been asking recently is if you're stuck on an island, what's the one album that you would take with you? And this is very apropos because you guys are literally stuck on an island in a way. You were at one point last year with the hurricane, but
yes.
yeah. So if you could, what's one album you would take?
Oh my God, I am going to sound like so freaking corny
Uh-oh.
out there. Everyone's going to be like sending me messages.
I already know what this one's going to be.
No, you
Your
don't.
Favorite?
No, this is like real old school. Like I used to love Barry Manilow's. There was like this one album with Mandy and oh my God. Yeah. And so I love that album.
That
fantastic.
Yeah.
I actually
Barry
thought she was
Manilow.
going to say The Sound of Music.
No.
And Ted, yours is also Barry Manilow, right?
No. Mine is more Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Earth, Wind, and Fire always reminds me of like Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Maybe they are from Brooklyn. They strike me as like that sort of hip feeling and vibe. Fun, awesome. Another question I always ask is books. Our audience loves hearing about books. Have there been any books in either of your business and or personal lives that you have found to be influential to you?
I'm going to go to probably one of the most influential books around, which is Think and Grow Rich. Mm-hmm. I constantly recommend that to people. It's probably in high school. I read it like 10 times right after high school. And I just try to practice that until I ran into Tony Robbins, who I think took Think and Grow Rich to another level. And I utilized him. But
yeah, that's been recommended before. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the book that was so impactful in our business was The Great Game of Business. We read that during the recession, and we implemented that. and I think it kind of saved our business. You know,
we are gonna snowball this a little bit, because yes, we use that, but at the core of our business, which I think we should mention, is Well Done.
Well done.
Well done. Never heard
Well
of that.
Done
By Kenneth Blanchard.
by Kenneth Blanchard, one of the guys who did the 1 Minute Manager. And to me, we used it as the foundation for our business, which is positive reinforcement, treating your people positively. And I think that has helped us create our business. When we were on the verge of going under, our people just wouldn't leave us. They were like, we said, well, you know, we understand if you have to go. And they were like, even if we have to work for free, we're going to stay here. We love this place. We love what we have here at ILSA, and we're not going anywhere. And it was all as a result of always using positive reinforcement and not negative. And the whole idea behind Well Done is that you cannot beat on a whale, because it'll turn around and snap you in half. So it's part of what they used to, before the whales went crazy, of course. This is happening before, but it's you can't spank them. You can't use negative reinforcement, because they can hurt you. And that's how it is in management. People do hurt you behind your back when you do these things. So if you learn to always use positive reinforcement and to communicate a lot better, a lot more positively, you're always getting your message across. You're always looking at yourself as part of that communication chain and making sure that you're doing the right thing. And it just leads to beautiful results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
that's awesome. Can't say it better than that. We come to the end of the podcast. We did discuss, Arleen, that you guys will be at some conferences. In case we can get this podcast out in time, where are you going to be so people can introduce themselves to you?
Okay, well, next week we're heading, we're going to be doing a conference here in Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rico International Insurance Center, which we are members of, is having a social event. And so we're going to be going to that. Then the next day we're flying out to Atlanta. We're going to be going to NAIA, and we're going to be getting to meet several people that we've had on episodes recently. From there, we'll be going to Indianapolis to SILA, which is the Securities and Insurance Licensing Administrators Conference.
Who would have thought?
That's
amazing.
They're all talking our language.
Yes,
there.
Of course.
Yeah.
Then from there, we'll be going to InsurTech Connect in Las Vegas.
Perfect.
And then we'll be going to Rhode Island for the Renaissance Conference.
Okay. So if I will put those on the show notes. So if anyone's listening and the timing works out, please reach out and connect. And you guys have been lovely, and it's so infectious. I have a feeling I'll be reaching out to you to help me try to solve this problem here.
You got a problem there, buddy.
I have a problem. So thank you so much. Connect with Ted and Arleen. All the information will be on the show notes. And my guests this week have been Ted and Arleen Taveras of Spot On Insurance and Insurance Licensing Services of America. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.